A new report by the Nigerian Interbank Settlement System reveals a worrying trend of increasing financial fraud across the country. Now, the reports covering the period from January to December 2023 shows that while the number of fraud cases dropped slightly, the actual losses incurred by the financial institutions rose significantly. So this morning, we'll be delving deeper into the findings of this report and see which states are mostly affected, what channels fraudsters are targeting, and how individuals can protect themselves. And to help us do justice to that, I have Kikelomo Shodeko, who is a risk consultant. Kikelomo, thank you so much for joining us on Business Edge, and happy Workers' Day to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was really funny how you started. To those that have
of course.
Funny. Yeah, good morning.
All right, thank you very much. So let's get into it now. We're going to look at it from, state by state, but then let's do a clean sweep for now. Now, we have a Lagos that has the highest overall fraud accounts. Any particular reason as to why other states like Abuja, Cross River also saw a significant increase in actual losses, despite a decline in cases?
Okay, I can say this for sure. So, if you look at the interbank data itself, like their report, it's very exciting because pictorial data gives you a better understanding. So there's this part where they show the map, right? And that map in itself tells us how commercial activities are happening in the country, and so it shows you where those incidents are the highest. So you see that the map is redder where there are a lot of commercial activities. So you have places like Kaduna, Kano, you have Lagos, you have most of the Southwest and all of the Southeast and South regions that are closer to the Southeast. So that basically just shows us where commercial activities are happening the most, right? Now, so the reason is that there are a lot of people, just like I said, commercial activities. So there are a lot of people doing a lot of commerce in these areas. Banks are always very active in these areas. And so that is why we are seeing a lot of fraudulent activity along those lines. So basically, that's it. Commercial activity will definitely pull in a lot of fraudulent activity at the same time, It's like basically not being able to throw away the baby with the bathwater, right? The baby's been baited, but you can't throw away the baby when you're done baiting the baby. So that's how it goes. So commercial activities really, really attract a lot of also fraudulent activities, especially where there are no checks and balances in place, And of course, as you know, the report, we'll go into the report. It's so exciting to see. I get really excited by data because it gives us a better understanding of what we're looking at. Thank you.
Yeah, so talking about data and still looking at Lagos, we know that it recorded the highest values of fraud accounts. 46,224 cases were recorded in 2023 from 45,952 in 2022, indicating about 40% overall. Now, it has an actual loss of about 49%, though it was able to cut down the losses by 12% to 8.7 billion naira in 2023 compared to 9.9 billion in 2022. So when you look at the difference, will you say that Lagos, in a way, has been able to, well, in a way, tried as much as possible to curb these fraudulent activities, or you still say that the margin in between is still insignificant?
Yeah, so I'll start with this. One major thing we always have with data is underreporting. So we have a case where customers that have been affected by these fraudulent activities get to a stage where they're not even reporting, or they are reporting, but the people that are supposed to take the report are not filing as they should. So that's where data get exciting, right? So you will get people that will report, and sometimes that data is not recorded, or it's recorded, but because the problem has been found, there's been a solution, it's been cleared, right? So as we know, most of the banks have had to expand their reachable channels. So most that used to be only via calls are now having to do WhatsApp messaging and all that. So with that will mean that whenever there is a solved case, I don't think that report translates into fraud as a whole. I think it's just seen as, okay, it's been solved, so there's no need to report it as fraud, right? That's one. And the other is that the people themselves, when they are faced with this, some give up and they'll be like, oh, if you report, at the end of the day, it's not like my money comes back anyway, so why should I report? There's no need to. So underreporting is a major issue. Now, I will say with this data, it shows something that the crooks have become smarter. So they're going for the people with the average higher amount of money rather than going for the number of people. So rather than targeting a larger pool of people, they're targeting people with higher percentage of money. Yeah, so that's where it is. So if we notice, the data for 2022 tells us that there were more people that were affected by the fraudulent activity, but the amount that was lost was lesser. But for 2023, there were lesser people, just like you said, but now there was more money being taken away from people through fraudulent activities. So that is the play on it, right? I'm looking forward to the 2024 data, but already we can see that the crooks are getting smarter, the criminals are getting smarter. That is, rather than go for the number of people and go for a lot of people, no, target the higher income people, people with higher savings, people with higher money in their accounts, and that, I think that's where the issue is. So we see that difference between 2022 and 2023. Thank you.
So would you also lay the blame at the feet of these banks? Because we hear that about 2.4 billion naira internal fraud was also recorded. And of course, it's been speculated that whether or not these criminal elements might be smart, there might just be some workers inside or within the system that are helping to allow these criminals to pilfer away people's money. So is there a possibility that we cannot overrule?
Yeah, no, that's a certain possibilities, So the thing is this, the only reason I'll keep my money in the bank is because I believe the bank will keep my money. Really, that's it, right? Most people are forced to use the banking system because there's no other choice, right? As you know, the government is going into its policy of the cashless policy, where you have a reduced use for money, physical money. You begin to use all types of channels to make sure that your money gets from point A to point B. Doesn't matter. We don't want to use cash no more. That's the policy. That policy has been ongoing for decades, right? So the idea is, if the government's policy is to push people into the banks need to, get their acts together, like the security, everything, get the right group of people for cybersecurity, get the right physical security managers, get the people that are all about the risk analysis and all that, the fraudulent analysis, bring them all together so that you have something solid, so that so you can advertise and say, to your last 5 naira or 5 kobo or 1 kobo, your money is safe with us, right? Banks seem to have moved from that and really focus on profit. So we do have that amount of money going internally. That is, the bank staff themselves are taking advantage of the lacune, of the flexibility, of the freedom in which they have access to information of customers, and they are taking people's monies. I can tell you that for free, that is one issue. And the banks themselves can tell us that most of the time they've had to put people under a lot of investigation because money is missing from a customer's account, and it can be traced to a staff, So that in itself shows that the staff in the banks are themselves moving. That's a lot of money. 2.4. That's a lot of money to be moved internally from customers. And sometimes some customers that are deceased, their families don't have access to their funds. That's another way the bank takes away people's money without them knowing. So some have family members that are deceased, and those family members don't have access to those bank accounts and information and things like that, and so that money just goes poof in the air, right? So those are part of the things that the customers face, that the banks themselves cannot assure customers that, we've got your money, we'll take care of your money, and be assured that whatever has to do with your money, to your last 1 kobo, we'll take care of your money. So for me, that's a major issue, where the internal staff are also as complicit as the external criminal. And of course, as we know, they're selling data. Data is being sold currently by anybody and anyone, right? So if you have your data out there, be certain that it's being sold to the highest bidder or to even the lowest bidder, depending on how much the person needs the money or how much the person is in dire straits, So that's it, really. Thank you.
So earlier on, you were talking about how these fraudulent criminals are able to perpetrate their crimes and navigate through the wings and the windows of the Nigerian banking industry to actually corner people's money and steal away that which they've kept within the banking industry. And earlier on, I actually lamented issues around the security checks that are meant to protect consumer funds, but this has not been the case. What am I talking about? We're talking about KYCs, know your customers. We're talking about OTPs, transaction limits, and some other form of security checks that are meant to prevent fraudulent activities within the banking space. And of course, we still have a situation where these banks actually default on CBN directives. But then we have a CBN that's meant to be a check on banking activities. And we have other regulatory bodies that are meant to also oversee the activities of the banking industry. So where is the miss? Why is it that despite these protocols and firewalls, we'll still have this monumental fraud within the sector?
Okay, so like I said, right, fraud cannot totally be eliminated in that way. Why? Because we have a situation where when there are commercial activities, when there's a cacophony, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of business activities ongoing, right? There will be scenarios where money is being moved from point A to point B. For whatever reason, it can be taken from people. It can be that a negotiation went right or wrong and that money was moved before the negotiation was done. There's so many scenarios to put into consideration fraud. But for me, the thing that I think that is most annoying in the whole situation is that it affects customers. So I remember that I was having a discussion with a group of people, and we're talking about how banks themselves can red flag customer spending, right? So, for example, your customer opened their account, say in Ikeja, right? And the address shows that their house address shows that they live also in Ikeja, right? Then you see transactions in VI. Now you notice that the transactions are consistent in VI. You can have like a group of people that will say, okay, let's say this transactions in VI means that this person works in VI, for example, right? And so that's that for that, right? Then suddenly you see there is a transaction. For years, transactions have always been between Ikeja and VI. Then all of a sudden you see the transaction in Ogun State. That should immediately pick up a red flag. That there should be a ding ding ding, right? Like I said, right? There should be a system where the customer's money is much more important than any other thing. Each customer is important because the more the government moves into a cashless policy, the more it is a prerequisite for banks to consider that they need to begin to monitor some things, right? So the moment you notice, oh, Ogun State, there should be like a text or a message, for Yahoo, for example, or for Google, right? If you suddenly are using another device to open the account, what do they do? They send you a message, right? So why can't we have that for customers in the banking sector, right? Because of the banks made a lot of profit all through COVID, right? So what's going on that the banks cannot consider their customers that important to make sure that they have those kind of checks on behalf of the customers? Now, let's put the bank and their issues aside. Like you said, we have a lot of firewalls. The CBN is there, the interbank payment system is there. But the truth is, we know how Nigeria is. There is too much happening at the same time, right? There's too many firewalls and too many, like they say, too many cooks spoil the broth. There's too many firewalls that you can't monitor who has the last access to make sure that the person is not defrauded, right? You can't monitor that. That's
of course. Sorry, Kikelomo, sorry to just quickly butt in here because we're actually out of time. So what can be done to ensure that?
Yeah. So what can be done? The interbank did that, So we have the different prevention methods.
Okay.
Oh, might we point out that most of the fraudulent activity that we've recorded between last year and this year has been via mobile, right? So now we don't need the ATMs to be fraudulent anymore.
Okay.
Just by transferring money from your account, from your phone is possible, right? So to do that, I think one of the things is to make sure that there are checks. There are 2, 3, 4 checks when it comes to social engineering. So when all that information that we've given to the banks, the bank should be able to request something out of the ordinary before people's monies are being moved from their mobile account, for example, right? So if a person loses their phone, that doesn't mean they lose all their money, right? That's one. The other thing is the interbank systems gave us the different prevention methods already, and I really, really urge us to move to look at that report. It's very, very enlightening. So one of the things I will require the bank to do is make sure that they put in checks for the customers. Let there be an extra firewall for the customer to be able to say, no, I did not request this. Yes, I requested it. Or when there has already been a fraudulent activity, a customer should be able to say, yes, this wasn't me. It wasn't me. It was someone, my phone was stolen and this was what happened, and so on and so forth. So if that can happen, for me, I am very customer centric, clientele centric. And if they can do that just for the client, that would be great for banking for the clients in general. Thank you.
Well, for the customer, they would even prefer that whether or not they lose their funds, those funds should be traced and should be recoverable. I think that about settles it for them. Well, Kikelomo Shodeko, risk consultant, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and insights with us.
The pleasure is all mine. Have a fantastic working day.
And you too.